Well, for more on how to prepare for and combat the psychological impact of the pandemic, I'm joined by Dr. Gregory Jantz from Seattle, one of the hardest hit places in the U.S. Now, Gregory is a world-recognized expert and innovator in the treatment of behavioral disorders and addictions. So good to have you on.
Well, such a time as this, what an important topic we're discussing.
And certainly, unlike, say, a broken arm or some other sort of physical, visible health issue, mental issues are harder to identify. So at a highly stressful time like this during a pandemic, what signs should we be looking for in ourselves and others that it might be time to seek help?
Well, one of the tipping points is that anxiety gets so high that it's turned into panic. Panic means that I've become irrational and I'm on that edge of despair, which means that I'm not always dealing exactly with reality. And we want to keep away from that edge, absolutely. And it's critical that we do not over isolate in a relationship sense.
And are there enough professionals, though, to really meet the growing mental health needs that are stemming from this crisis?
Michelle, this is such an important question to look at. There likely are not enough professionals, not enough mental health professionals as well. I'm connecting with individuals actually around the country, and everybody's feeling this. One of the things that we need to be aware of is that the professionals will suffer, this is the helpers, from secondary post-traumatic stress. They reach a point of overload of anxiety themselves. And if you can imagine being in a room attempting to help someone and you're wondering at that very moment, are you being infected? We also know that we're attempting to address this in a virtual sense. There are some limitations, but I'm so glad that we have that.
And certainly can be hard, I know, especially for people in media where you sort of have this constant flow of information about something like this. I mean, what are you hearing in your practice so far about the psychological impact on those who are now being forced to spend their days at home, who've had their schedules disrupted?
Well, we're a facility where people come and stay and celebrating our 36th year. And one of the things that we're hearing from folks is it feels a lot safer to be here knowing that I'm getting help versus being out intensely in the community. And so we're seeing folks in some ways relieved when they are asking for help. And I think we want to really give the word today. Be careful about doing self-destructive behaviors. Social distancing and social isolation is two different things. If you isolate too much, anxiety goes up. You isolate again too much, depression goes up. What we want to do is be careful about turning to things that are not healthy. It can be natural. You want to go towards that a lot of food, people are eating too much, and importantly, we're watching alcohol consumption go up. These are the self-destructive behaviors we've got to be aware of and not get in that pattern.
And you mentioned alcohol. We are seeing sales of alcohol rising.
Yes.
And obviously, we all have our go-to default patterns that we tend to turn to
Yes.
in times
Yes.
of stress. But we know that alcohol overindulgence has been linked to suppressed immune responses and the increased likelihood of pneumonia. You certainly don't want to compound any issues. What do you recommend in terms of finding healthy coping mechanisms?
Well, one of the things that we do when we're filled with anxiety, we tend not to drink enough water. I know that sounds interesting and very simple, but we tend to drink a lot of other things when we're anxious. One of the things I'd like to see folks do is by noon, get in most of your water. If you want to have coffee and so forth, that's fine, but don't just use that all day long. So get the water intake in. Water improves mood, water helps with concentration, and that hydration is super important when we're dealing with anxiety and depression. Sounds simple, but critically important.
No, very important. I'm glad you shared that. Now, I also want to talk about families who are trying to juggle now teleworking with caring for small children. What's the best way for parents to maintain their sanity and also give some sense of normalcy for the children?
Yeah. Enormously to have a sense of being normal in a time that's very extraordinary, unnormal. So one of the things we want to do, first of all, and most folks are working on this, but we need to establish routines that are predictable. Particularly, it depends on the age of the kids, but developmentally, younger kids are going to need more and more of a routine. Now, that routine can take many different forms. I know that we need to get out. There's importance to get outside. A lot of movement for our kids is important. If you're online school and you're managing your kids and they're doing an online version of school, they're in front of that screen for a lot of time. We've got to keep the movement up. Movement as it relates to anxiety and depression, super important. So when you can, when you can get out, go outside for that 20-minute intense walk. Keep the outdoors as a part of your self-care.
And just quickly, how might someone previously diagnosed with a condition like, say, OCD
Yes.
or anxiety really manage in this sensitive time?
Particularly we're looking at obsessive compulsive disorder, a fear of germs. We're battling something that's invisible. And so one of the things we've got to look at is this can be a tipping point. Maybe you've already struggled with depression. Maybe you've already been told you have an anxiety disorder. And so this is particularly an intense time. And what I want you to be sure to do is to ask for help. There are resources available. We've got to not try to isolate and do this on our own. Ask for help.
Certainly very good advice there. We appreciate you coming on. Dr. Gregory Jantz there, expert and innovator in the treatment of behavioral disorders and addictions and author of Healing Depression for Life.